The woman begins by cutting down into the hillside, opening a cavity large enough to become a shelter. Once the location is chosen, she begins clearing the ground and opening space for the whole build. The first actions look simple, but this stage determines whether the shelter will later feel stable, clean, and practical to construct. Each strike of the tool and each fresh layer of soil makes it clear that this is not a temporary stop, but a structure being carved directly out of the forest floor. As the chamber opens wider, she begins shaping the interior floor and preserving a path for movement. At this point, the viewer can already see her intention clearly to turn raw earth into a space that can be sat and slept in and used safely. She keeps refining the steps, trimming the edges, and making the entrance more secure. It is quiet work, but it matters greatly because a shelter only becomes truly usable when the person inside can move in and out without fighting the ground itself. Once the core shape is established, she leaves the pit and heads into the forest for more material. The long branches, smaller poles, and natural covering she brings back suggest that the shelter is about to move into a new stage with a roof and better protection. Science note: an earth-covered shelter usually holds temperature more steadily than open ground because a thick layer of soil absorbs heat slowly during the day and releases it slowly as the air cools. That thermal mass effect often makes the inside feel calmer than the outside air. The first supports go down, the sloped roof begins to appear, and the earth starts to settle back over the top. From this point on, the dugout stops looking like a hole and starts to resemble a place that can resist sunblock rain and disappear into the terrain. The final minutes spent smoothing the surface, refining the entrance, and revealing the outer form of the shelter. It sits low beneath the hillside, discreet but clear enough for the viewer to feel how much labor has already gone into it. She returns to the interior work, refining the steps, cleaning the edges, and preparing the area near the entrance. These smaller actions make the shelter look more orderly and reinforce the sense that it is being finished for real use rather than built only for appearance. The first fire appears, and a flat stone is placed beside the seating area. That single change makes the dark earth chamber feel more alive because the shelter is no longer only a place to hide in. It begins to function as a place to live. She then cuts shorter pieces of wood outside to build a low barrier at the entrance. The rhythm of cutting, carrying, and test fitting each piece gives the whole sequence a handmade quality, as if everything is being built from whatever the forest around her is willing to provide. The low entrance screen gradually comes together, giving the shelter a clearer boundary and adding another windbreak around the fire area. It is a small visual detail, but it makes the dugout feel far more organized than it did when it was only bare soil under a sloped roof. When the meat is laid onto the heated stone, the tone of the video shifts completely. The entire structure suddenly feels more meaningful because the viewer is no longer just watching a shelter get built. They are watching it become useful in the middle of the forest. The Earth Shelter chapter closes with quiet moments of rest at the entrance and a simple meal cooked on site. It feels like a fair reward for the labor that came before, and it also creates a clean resting point before the story moves into a completely different setting. Very quickly, however, the video opens into a different place, a bamboo stilt hut, a fenced garden, and a clearing large enough for a new project to begin. Wearing a red jacket, she moves into the bamboo thicket to choose the right poles. cutting and dragging scenes make one thing clear. The second chapter is not repeating the first, but shifting from earthwork toward framing and surface building with bamboo. The bamboo is brought back to the hut and stacked beside the yard and fenced plot. These frames help the viewer understand the layout the main hut already exists, and the material she is preparing is meant for an attached extension beside it. If you enjoy calm shelter building videos like this, subscribe and stay until the end to see how different the finished structure looks. After changing into a light top, she begins measuring, splitting, and aligning the bamboo beside the hut. The pace now feels more technical. The bamboo is not just being delivered, but sized and oriented carefully so the new floor can sit flat and work properly. Long poles are laid along the fence line, and thinner pieces are assembled into the border of the new platform. The viewer can almost feel her sketching the next structure on the ground before lifting it into a real extension. Directly on the new platform where she crouches low and begins weaving the first bamboo slats. From this point on, the progress becomes highly visible as the open area beside the hut is gradually covered by a surface that can be walked on and used. She keeps pulling, bending, and pressing the slats into line while shifting her own weight across the forming floor. Those repeated movements create a sense of stability because the deck is not only being filled in, it is being tested as it is built. Higher camera angles show the new floor almost like a woven bamboo mat stretching across the empty space. Compared with the Earth Shelter chapter, this part is brighter, more open, and feels like an expansion outward rather than a descent inward. A bamboo waterspout appears in the middle of the sequence as a small but memorable detail, and the work then returns to lashing, bracing, and straightening the deck. Moments like that keep the structure from feeling like nothing but frame and wall. They make it feel closer to a lived-in space. Once the platform is nearly complete, she moves to the wall slats and checks how the old hut joins the new extension. This stretch shows a practical mindset. Very clearly, she is not building only for appearance, but trying to make the whole space look consistent and last longer. Wider shots begin to reveal the scale of the finished result. The hut ladder, side deck, and fenced yard now read as one connected compound. The reward in Chapter 2 comes not from a meal, but from watching the usable space visibly grow before the viewer's eyes. The video closes on calm shots of the finished structure, with the small dog adding a domestic detail that softens the rhythm. After two very different chapters, one carved into the earth and one lifted above it, the story ends with a feeling of stability, order, and a place that now seems ready to be lived in.